You're listening to Inside the Village, where all news is local and no topic is off limits.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley. So help me,
This is Inside the Village for Friday, July 7th, 2023. I'm Scott Sexsmith alongside Editor-in-Chief Michael Friscolanti here at Village Media. Executive producer Derek Turner has returned. The band is back together.
Thank goodness. It was a disaster last week. Who was in here, Zach?
Zach wasn't that
Zach.
bad.
Jeez, Zach.
I mean, you know,
Zach
some growing pains.
Zach was good.
He's got some work to do, but you know what? I see potential.
You could tell he was trying to replace Derek. I could feel it. He was trying to push him out.
I think they call that posturing.
Yes, yeah. Zach's
Watch your back,
Zach's
Derek.
nasty like that.
Zach's gunning for you. Anyway, it's good to have the crew back inside Studio A here downstairs in the
Studio A.
We've now called it Studio A.
Studio A, yeah. We usually record in Studio F.
Was it not the Today Show? They always used to say inside Studio 1A or 1B, and I thought, is that just a thing? We're just making that up.
1A.
We're just making that up.
Yeah, they are.
All right. Inside Studio A here at the Village HQ.
Remind me again, this wasn't a vault, right? This wasn't a safe.
This was a bank
safe?
vault, yeah.
I thought the bank vault was upstairs with the big...
Two. There was so much money, there was two.
Okay.
Two vaults.
All right.
And now one is a studio.
Looks good.
All right, it does look good. Only because you boys are in here. All right, C18. Man, I don't even know where to begin. I know we talked about it last week and had Michael Geist on, just a wonderful guest, but this thing has taken on a life of its own.
It's amazing what's happened in the last few days. Well, we talked with Michael about Bill C-18, as a just remind our listeners. This is the Online News Act that the Trudeau government brought in that would force, big tech like Facebook and Google to pay for content from companies like ours that are posted on their platforms. What's happened, of course, is Facebook automatically said, well, we're just going to pull out of Canadian news. We're not going to allow any links. So basically, local news, all Canadian news, including the news from our sites, is going to vanish from Facebook. Since we recorded that episode, Google has followed suit, saying that they're going to pull out of Canadian news as well. So if you Google Sault Ste. Marie, for example, you won't find any Sault Today articles in your search results. We won't be on the Google News app. It will be as if we never existed on those two platforms. And then, of course, the government's now trying to say, the federal government's saying, well, we're going to pull all our ads off of Facebook. And there's a lot of posturing going on here right now. And it's funny because we predicted this for a long time, but the fallout's begun. And
Pablo Rodriguez, the Heritage Minister, held a news conference earlier this week. And it just seems to be one pile of BS after another out of that guy's mouth.
You're allowed to say that. I'm supposed to try to be the reporter here, but you're allowed to say that for sure.
I can be biased.
Yeah, you can be biased. And I wrote a column about it that appeared on all our sites this week.
Yes, an excellent editorial.
Thank you very much. And I mentioned that it's a flawed piece of legislation. I've had readers write me to say, well, that really turns me off when you take a stance like that it's flawed. And I think, well, no one can argue it's not flawed. It's a flawed piece of legislation because it's going to impact a lot of news organizations like ours. It's not doing what it's intended. If it was intended to actually get these tech companies to pay, it's failed miserably because they backed out. They're not going to do anything. And the longer term, the reality is, and what we tried to argue in the editorial is that Village Media, for example, was born digital. We worked with Google and Facebook. We wanted our content on their platforms because it drove readers to our sites.
Yeah.
So more and more people would see the local journalism we're doing because it was on those platforms. We don't believe the prevailing wisdom that somehow they're stealing our content.
Not at all.
Not at all. We believe we want to put it there for the good of our company, for the good of our readers to see it. And so the reality is you could have up to half of our traffic, half of the readership just kind of vanish, right?
Yeah.
So that means fewer people are going to be seeing the local journalism that we do, and it's going to threaten our ability to do that local journalism. That's the scary part.
And it wasn't about economics. It's not like we were there with our hands out saying, pay us, pay us, pay us. We just like the traffic side of it and what it did, to expose, our content on those platforms.
For sure. And as Village has been upfront about is that we had license agreements with Facebook and Google from a long time ago that allowed us to work with them so that our content could be on their site. So this was a great opportunity for us, and it's the reason we were able to build into what we are. And a lot of our new sites that have launched in the last couple of years, that's how we do it. And as Jeff Algier, our CEO, said, Facebook's the best on-ramp for our audiences that we've been able to find. It's how we build these local news sites. And the end result is that we have journalists in our communities who actually live there. They live in the communities that they're serving, that they're writing about. that's a rare commodity in this days of journalism, and it's scary to think that something we built up like that could be really harmed because of this.
Yeah, and we talked about it with Michael Geist last week. The fact that there is no plan B, you know, because the assumption was, well, they're just bluffing. That's what the government. They're just bluffing. They'll never do it. But what if they aren't? And clearly they aren't.
Yeah.
And there is no plan B.
Yeah, and clearly not at all, right? Because as soon as the law was passed, Facebook made their move. Now Google's made their move. And I mean, I don't want to act like the sky's falling and be out here saying that, you know, we have a lot of things in the works, and we believe we're going to come out. Number one reason, because our quality local journalism is, people depend on it and they look to us. And basically our message to readers is, we're still here, right? We are still going to be doing the journalism we've always done. You just might not see it the way you normally do. If you like to get your news on your Facebook feed, you probably aren't going to get that anymore as in the months to come. But we're still doing the journalism we do. We encourage our readers to visit us at our homepage, to subscribe to our free afternoon newsletter so that you get the hometown headlines in your inbox every day at 3 o'clock. We just kind of, we need to explain to our readers, and we're trying to do that we're still here, we're not going anywhere, and if you enjoy our journalism, you know where to find us.
All right, well said. Let's move on to the first word to Frisco. Some great stuff this past week. Barb Latowski in Guelph, about a family in that city recently selling their car and opting for bikes or an e-bike. What's the... an
electric cargo bike, I think it was.
An electro cargo bike.
It's a great story. I asked some of our other editors if this is happening in their communities, but I guess, you know, this family decided they wanted to ditch their car and get a bike. It even has a compartment for the kids. and what I loved about this story is the father was just so thrilled with this decision, like just so happy that he had done it, because it allows him to have a bit more of a social life. When you're riding your bike, you see other people around town. And it had the best quote of the week. I think the quote was, we know our neighbors and we run into friends in our community. It's easier to stop and engage with people when you're not traveling in a metal box at 50 kilometers an hour. And I just love that. And I think about, you know, obviously C18 is on my mind, as we just talked about. And I think about, like, is this hard-hitting local journalism? No. Do we do a ton of hard-hitting local journalism? Yes, we do. But this is great local journalism, too. We're telling a story about someone in our community who's done something interesting and unique that may become a trend that other people may follow. And it's fascinating. I don't live in Guelph, but I read that story and I loved it.
Good stuff. Sidebar, I've toyed with the idea of buying a scooter. Did I tell you that?
No.
Yeah.
Like, what kind? Like
those stand-ups.
Oh, yeah. The stand-up one?
Yeah. Couldn't you see me going down Queen Street, briefcase over my shoulder?
I could see it. It's a scary thought.
Doing my part for the environment.
You'd finally get on suit today.
You never know. Tyler Evans, one of our great reporters out of Aurelia Matters, got a choice assignment and was sent to Smashville to cover the NHL draft.
Yeah, this is great too. I mean, you go to Nashville to cover local stories, right? Colby Barlow, a great OHL player, was going to become the top pick from the highest pick ever from the city of Aurelia, right, in the NHL. And so Tyler wrote a beautiful 2-part story on him before the draft, traveled to Nashville for the draft, was there for the big moment, spoke to him after, spoke to all kinds of different people there as well. So we kind of covered it from the beginning to the end. Ultimately, I think he was drafted 18th to Winnipeg, so he's super stoked to be going to a Canadian team. And what I liked about this is that Tyler and his editor, Dave Dawson, pitched this idea months ago. They saw it coming. Just great instincts, and it ended up being great for all of us.
You're going to send Derek and I to cover the Masters next year.
For sure. But you have to actually provide some copy when you go down there. Like
we'll provide copy. Right, Derek? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Derek says, oh, yeah. Okay, finally, a landmark restaurant in Sault Ste. Marie that closed a number of months ago. The building has now been sold. Muyo's. If you live up here, if you visit up here, Muyo's is famous. And again, I'm going to say it for the 10 millionth time. This is local journalism. Absolutely.
So this is how it happened, right? Muyo's was closed a couple of years ago, closed down. A lot of sad people here. Apparently, they made great roasted chicken. I think it was, and I never had it, to be honest. So
okay.
But everyone's talking about
your secret.
Full disclosure. And but obviously a landmark. I think it's a heritage building. There's a sign on the side of the building. It's been around since the late 1800s. Am I right? I think that's what it is. But the restaurant sold. A lot of people upset. It's been for sale for 2 years. The city announced at their city council meeting a couple months ago that it's actually being now sold for back taxes. Haven't been paid, right? And lo and behold, there's a sold sign on the window. And we're scrambling to find out who it is. It hasn't been registered yet with the land registry office because the deal hasn't closed.
Yep.
David Helwig our great reporter here, works some sources. finds out who the buyers are, 3 local people, gets in touch with one of them. And one of them is Brendan Urema, who played for the Sarnia Sting. A Sioux boy played for the Sarnia Sting, right? And he tells this great story about how when the visiting team used to go eat at Muyo's, the owner would give him some extra chicken in a bag with his name on it.
Very cool.
Which is just awesome. And so they're super stoked to buy this old restaurant. They're going to do some renovations. There's no tenant yet announced, but the goal is to get somebody back in there and get this historic restaurant or something in there, but this historic building back up and running again. So you can imagine the reaction. We can still share stories on Facebook right now. So this story was shared on Facebook. You can imagine how many people reacted in a positive way. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. All right, sticking with food, we're going to talk food and more specifically best before dates on today's show. What can you tease us about that?
With lots of talk in Ottawa right now, I believe there's a parliamentary committee that's examining better ways to deal with food insecurity and to make sure we don't waste as much food. And a lot of experts are talking about how one of the best ways to do it is to get rid of best before dates, because a lot of food ggets wasted that shouldn't be wasted. Right. So it's a very interesting topic and it's a timely one. So we're going to talk to an old friend, Mike Van Massow. Did I pronounce it right?
See, I said to Dare all day today when I knew Mike was going to be on the show, because I booted his name the last time he was on the
10
show.
Times before we did.
I've been walking around the building all day just saying Mike Von Massow.
Is that what it is?
Massow.
Von Massow.
He's a wonderful guest.
Great guy, smart guy. So I'm excited to have him back on.
All right, Mike joins us when Inside the Village returns right after this.
Reporters, editors, and journalists who go the extra mile to get the story and get it right. Go behind the scenes with those who cover the stories that matter most to you and your community. Look for it in the Village Features section of your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Welcome back to Inside the Village. I'm Scott Sexsmith with Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief here at Village Media. We're going to talk some best before dates with Mike Von Massow, food economist from the University of Guelph and friend of the show. Mike, great to have you back on Inside the Village. Thanks for doing this.
Great to be here. Looking forward to it.
Mike, the government is looking at examining the issue of best before dates. How did this come about, and can you break it down for us?
Well, best before dates are considered a significant contributor to food waste, and are probably the least well understood piece of information on any food packaging, which is saying a lot given how much information we have on food packaging, a lot of which is also confusing. So I think that many of us have been saying that given that most Canadians use best before date and expiry date synonymously,
right?
It's beyond redemption. I don't think we can change that. It's gone so far that it is an expiry date in everyone's mind, and so isn't giving anyone any useful information. B is causing stuff to be thrown out both in grocery stores and at home that probably doesn't. And C is probably giving people a false sense of security from a food safety perspective, that really the government's saying, well, maybe we need to look at it because a lot of people are saying this just isn't working the way it is intended.
And Mike, in simple layman's terms, what is the difference between a best before date and an expiry date? Because I know there is one.
Okay, so a best before date is a signal on the day that this product will maintain its peak freshness and quality.
Right.
So if the best before date is today, that means today it is still as good as it's ever going to be. Tomorrow it might be as good as it's ever going to be, but it might start to deteriorate in terms of freshness and stuff. It doesn't tell us anything about food safety. And on the other hand, an expiry date tells you when we expect this thing not to deliver the quality that it's delivered in the past. There are very few products in this country that actually have expiry dates. Baby formula is one, right. And if you hit the expiry date on that, then they're saying this might not give you the nutrition that you're expecting from it. You should probably not use it anymore.
And isn't there something with best before dates? There's a 90-day threshold. Could I have read something along those lines?
I don't remember anything specific to a 90-day threshold. I apologize, Scott, because some things are less than 90 days. So,
Right.
I mean, if you buy yogurt as an example, it's one in our household that's always a bone of contention.
Yes.
Because my wife tends to think that the best before date is when Cinderella's coach turns it back into a pumpkin, and the world of yogurt ends on the best before date, and she thinks I'm taking a walk on the wild side when I'm eating it beyond that date. And frankly, things like yogurt are often I can't tell if it's beyond its best
Exactly.
before date in many cases. There's I mean, I've seen best before dates on water.
Really?
So to me, it's a signal of quality, and it's a blunt signal of quality. The point I'm going to reiterate is that we also have the issue that it is not a signal of food safety. So beyond the best before date, it can still be very safe to eat. Before the best before date, if you've opened it or you haven't stored it correctly, it can be unsafe. So to me, there's risk on both sides of the best before date if people are interpreting as relating to food safety.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I'm just like your wife. I'm nuts about what's in the fridge and what the dates are on. It drives me nuts.
Really?
And I have a particular relative who is like, I can't be in their fridge because I feel like everything in there is way past the date, right? And they're like, oh, no, it's fine, right? But there's got to be a happy medium here. I guess my question is, why would they make a system so confusing? It doesn't make any. Why don't they just have the expiry date and that's it? What's the point of the best before?
Well, it's a great question, Michael, and the answer is I don't know. And to your point, to your obsession with best before dates, if I could.
Yeah, it is. It's true. It's true.
There are lots of things we can do relative to determining food safety. You've got the sniff test, look at it. There are lots of things we can do to say, is this something I should eat or not? Mm-hmm. In terms of the start of the best before date, I think to a degree it was to give us a quality signal to sort of say, mm-hmm. this is when it's at its best. Mm-hmm. But because we've turned it into an expiration date, that's kind of, the best before date can give us a signal. Well, in an ideal world, you'd eat this yogurt before then, but you can eat it beyond. Mm-hmm. In an ideal world, you'd eat this product before then, but you can eat it beyond. And if we interpreted it that way, then it's not vital information, but it is useful information. Mm-hmm. And so, frankly, I think to a degree, the best before date is relatively arbitrary. It's not set from a regulatory perspective. It is set from the manufacturer. And if I'm risk averse, I'm going to set it on a fairly narrow timeline, mm-hmm. so that I maximize your experience, right? None of us want to open something up and have it not be good. Mm-hmm. And so then from the brand's perspective, it's in their best interest to have a relatively narrow. A cynic might argue that a short timeline best before date means they'll sell more because we throw it out before we need to. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sometimes accused of being a cynic. I'm not sure that I will be in this context that much of a cynic, but I think that there is some inclination to keep it relatively short to make sure you manage your risk of an experience, mm-hmm. If you're the company processing there.
That makes sense. So how did we get to this point now? I mean, obviously food insecurity is an issue that more and more people are thinking about, the issue of food waste. How did we get here as opposed to 5 years ago where we're thinking, maybe we need to take a look at this because we're probably wasting a lot more food than we need to be?
Well, I think we're just starting. I think people are paying more attention. I think Guelph is a relatively unique place where we're paying more attention. We were probably paying attention to it earlier because of a lot of the city stuff that the city of Guelph has done around food waste, a lot of the things that we've done at the university around food waste to raise awareness. We've started to hear some buzz around best before dates. And frankly, I think it's bubbled to the surface now because of food price inflation, and people are looking at what can we do to reduce the cost of products. And if I don't think best before dates are raising the price of products. I might take that, but they are in fact probably denting our food budgets, because if we're buying stuff and throwing it out, if we didn't throw it out, our food dollar would go further. We'd buy less of it. If demand goes down, then potentially price goes down. I think an example of where it's probably directly affecting food prices more quickly is because we think of food of best before dates as expiration dates. We often won't buy something that has several days of peak quality left because we think that's the drop dead date. And Michael, I'm looking
You're
at
talking
you
about me again, Mike. I know it. I knew it. I can see you looking at me.
Is so that gets returned or dumped at the grocery store several days before it's still at peak quality. And so if stores didn't have to either return that or throw it out, that would also lower costs, right? That's contributing. That's all part of margin.
So where are we at when we saw the House of Commons committee put out this report arguing that maybe it's time to do away with best before dates? How would that actually happen? Would they have to pass some legislation? And I assume that some food manufacturers would not be in favor of this idea.
It's hard for me to say how food manufacturers would, I guess, again, there is some brand risk around removing best before dates. Maybe we could, maybe we did. There are other things we could do, packaged on dates or sell by dates or all sorts of different things, all of which are just as subject to confusion as before. So might there be some resistance, perhaps, from a brand management perspective, or if you're a cynical from a sales volume perspective. But I think that this is a regulatory change. I'm not 100% sure, frankly, if it requires a legislative change or just a regulatory change, but there is a requirement for most products of a best before date.
For sure. And you mentioned the rising cost, the inflation at the grocery store. That's what we had you on a few months ago chatting about. Where do we stand on that, Mike? We've seen the inflation rate go down. How has it impacted at the grocery store?
We've seen the general rate of inflation go down. We've seen some decrease in the rate of inflation at the grocery store. It's not come down at the same rate as inflation has, because frankly, it's been caused by different things. I think there's some room for optimism, particularly as we get into the local growing season. We're just coming to the end of asparagus season. Strawberry season was a little late this year, and we're still eating strawberries probably a little longer than we're used to. Those, because we're into local production and we've had a reasonable season, and we're not paying for those in American dollars. Those things are coming down, and I think as we get into the next stuff coming to the market, we'll see prices come down. I think to a degree we've baked in things like the war in Ukraine. Extreme weather events can still have a significant impact, so there's some uncertainty, but I think there's some room for optimism that we'll see, at the very least, a slowdown of how fast prices are going up, and maybe in some areas where prices will go down. One thing to remember, if I may, if I've got another couple of seconds, is to say that food inflation is a sort of average number, and there are things that have gone up more than the 9 or 10% that we're seeing, and there are things that have gone up less than that 9 or 10%. And I think that as creatures of habit, as we are, we tend to buy, if something is in our basket this week, it was likely in our basket last week. And if we are willing to be a bit flexible, we can buffer some of these price increases, but it requires us to think a little differently.
Mike, the feds just announced a grocery rebate. What's your take on that, and is it enough?
Well, is it enough? I'm lucky. I have a good job. My wife and I both work. We're feeling the pinch at the grocery store. We probably won't get this. We probably shouldn't get this. My 28-year-old son, whose salary is growing and the impact is falling behind, we'll get this. We'll get that $200, which is maybe an average basket is a weekly shop for some people.
Right.
He'll get it. He probably doesn't need it. So I think it was probably given to more people than it should have been. And for the people at the bottom end of the income scale, they probably needed more than they're getting. So is it a good thing to do? Yes. Is it sufficient for people at the low end of the income scale? Probably not. Could it have been better? Yes, but don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Yeah, I think the thing that bothered me a little bit about it, Mike, was just all the politicians out doing a photo op yesterday about, the money's going in your bank, and just silliness, posing at it's really like it's a PR move and a commercial almost. Is it fair for some people to think that?
100%. If we've seen prices go up 10% in the last year, more on some things. It continues to stay high, and so if as an individual you get $220 and as a family you get $460, to me. It's a nice to have, but should we be screaming it from the mountaintops? What a great thing we've done. Maybe not.
Exactly. That's what bothered me about it, right? I mean, what's the old saying your grandmother used to say? If you got to tell everyone you're doing something, it's just not worth the effort.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what bothers me.
Exactly right.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, good stuff. Mike von Massow from the University of Guelph, food economist. Mike, great to have you back on the show, and I'm sure it won't be your last visit to Inside the Village. Thanks for this.
Well, thanks for having me, and looking forward to being back.
For the latest in in-depth features and enterprise journalism from your local writers at Village Media, be sure to check out The Big Read. The Big Read. It's the full story behind the headlines. Look for The Big Read on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Back to wrap on Inside the Village with Michael Friscoletti, Editor-in-Chief here at Village Media, Derek Turner, Executive Producer, and yours truly, Scott Sexsmith. Always great to have Mike von Massow on the program. Smart guy. I wanted to ask him about sour cream.
You should have.
How does, really, seriously, fair question, how does sour cream have an expiry date?
I don't know, but I wouldn't tell you. If it was a day past the expiry date.
Are you kidding me? A day?
I wouldn't touch it. Sour cream? No. I don't know what it is. This stuff must be working. If the conspiracy theory goal is to have us throw stuff out and go buy them, I'm the worst offender.
You're like hook, line, and sinker. You're
can't.
All in.
I can't. Like, I look at, you talk about yogurts. I look at the yogurts in the fridge all the time. Well, when do these expire? When I'm buying them, I check the expiry. I try to buy the ones that are furthest away. That's nuts.
You're that guy in the grocery store. You're going like behind and
yeah. I know. I'm moving everything around.
See, and I'm the guy that's going behind you and refacing the shelf because of my OCD.
See? Everybody has their own
That's
thing.
why we're a great team.
That's right. That's the way it is.
You go in and break stuff, and I go in and
We should go to the grocery store together. We should.
We should do a show on remote.
Yeah. Village Media goes shopping.
Yes. ITV on location.
Why not? They do that all the time, the radio stations, when there's big sales and stuff.
Yeah.
No, Mike's great. You know what? These are, as we mentioned to him off the air, he's a great voice to talk to when there's big issues regarding food security, regarding the inflation of grocery at the grocery store, and he can explain it in a way that a lot of people can't, which is great. So it's nice that he's willing to come on when we need to chat.
Yep, good guy for sure. Friend of the show, as they say.
Friend of the show.
All right, let's pack up, wrap up, and get out of here for another week. ITV at Village Media, if you want to reach out to Frisco, Derek, or myself, of course, featuring no best before dates or expiry dates on this program. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, don't forget, you can still share this episode on Facebook and
yes,
and,
you absolutely,
and Instagram.
You're damn right you can.
As long as for the time being, you can still share it all you want and like it all you want.
Yes, we encourage you to do that.
But if you don't find it there, go to your local news site, click on features, and Inside the Village is right there.
Yeah, and the other thing that you can do, maybe go to your local MP and say, hey, man, what the hell?
Yeah, seriously.
What is up with this? Because it's just, it's not right. Inside the Village, ITV at villagemedia.ca. Find us all over the internet. InsideTheVillage.ca, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And, of course, across the Village Media Network. For executive producer Derek Turner, Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Have a wonderful weekend. Talk to you next week.
You've been listening to Inside the Village.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe, provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.